Welcome to another episode of Lee with Jeffrey podcast. I'm Jeffrey Hernandez, your host, and today I'm honored to have returning to our studio Elaine Perez, a realtor and a mortgage broker who is revolutionizing the market for not only the buyers, but the sellers. And today we start the first of many episodes on educating the community on the right choices, the pathway to not only use real estate as a way to get personal growth and personal wealth, but also to start establishing the generational wealth that you can leave for your family right after your last breath. Something we don't like to think about, but a thought that has to come to action while you're still here and have the opportunity to do so. Remember, we have a responsibility to leave the ones we leave behind better than we were when we were here. And so today we're going to focus on the first-time homebuyers, something that a lot of us in the community didn't have the learnings for when we started, and how many mistakes did we make. Our purpose here today is to make sure you do not make those mistakes with the education and empowerment that you're about to receive here. Welcome back, Elaine.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Thanks for having me.
For those of us that were not here in your first podcast when you were part of our episode, why don't you tell us a quick synopsis of who Elaine Perez is?
So Elaine is a mom of 3 boys, a wife, and I was an educator for 15 years, and I've transitioned through, a few careers, and I'm now a real estate broker full-time.
Awesome. So you went from the chalkboard to selling properties, and you have other businesses as well.
Other businesses as well.
What
jewelry store and a property management company.
Totally different than real estate. Jewelry and real estate. Yes. How do you manage both of those?
They go together nicely. Diamonds and houses. They're both great investments. So
it also gives you a place to find clients to be able to sell houses to. And if they come buy your jewelry, they definitely can afford the properties.
Definitely. And I love couples, right? Couples that are buying engagement rings are amazing because they're buying engagement rings and they're looking for properties, and oftentimes they don't become my clients, but I do give them some advice that they take on, with them.
Well, it's definitely an honor to share the studio with you, and more importantly, to start this episode together as we educate the listeners on how they can utilize real estate for personal wealth as well as for generational wealth. And as a realtor myself, since I was 19 years old, a mortgage broker as well, I think that the two talents that we both bring to the table and our scars and wins can definitely help those listeners to avoid those things. So let's start off by, I'm a first-time home buyer. I know nothing about real estate. What should be my first step?
So I always tell my clients that the first step is to find an expert, right? Whether the expert is a mortgage broker or the expert is a realtor. Either way that they go, they're going to be greeted with a lot of knowledge. A lot of people have misconceptions, right? Oh, I have to have this amount of money saved, or I have to have, my credit has to be this, based on what they hear from their friends, from their family members,
or social media.
And their situation is not the same as everyone else's. So by starting with an expert, the expert can help them put together a plan. And that's really what I preach. Put together a plan. Step by step, what do I need to do to get there?
When I was practicing real estate on a daily basis, I would tell my clients that some people hesitate to find an expert because all that comes to their mind is, I have to pay them commission. But what they don't realize is that that payment of commission that they're doing to find that expert and to benefit from that expert is really, really small compared to the benefits of having that person to be your ambassador. I look at, as a first-time home buyer, the listeners need to understand that the expert is their ambassador. They're the person that's going to be the vessel to protect their interest and their future investment, right? And so as real estate experts, you learn so much through wins, through failures that you transfer to your clients. Now, picking the right expert is probably the most important decision. So as we start this educational series for our listeners, for that first-time home buyer, what are the characteristics that you believe are the ideal ones in finding a real estate expert?
So to piggyback first a little bit on what you said about the commission, no one makes money in a transaction until you close. So, realtors, mortgage brokers, as we're putting this plan together for clients, we're working for free. We are actually working to empower these people to be able to purchase their home.
Provide a service.
we provide a service. There's no one should ever be charging for that service as a realtor or a mortgage broker to put together your plan. Consultations are free.
And I'm glad you clarified that, because there is so many people out there that are doing illegal things. And when you are a first-time home buyer, you don't realize that it's illegal until you are involved in the experience, right?
Right.
And so I'm glad you clarified for our listeners that at no time when you go and seek that expertise should you have any fees up front, that all of the fees are paid when the transaction is closed. And it's really critical that the person that is advocating for you is licensed. That's really important. So going back to the characteristics of the ideal real estate expert, what would be your ideal characteristics?
So I think that an ideal real estate broker, or maybe a mortgage broker, is someone that specializes in first-time home buyers. They can do other things, but they specialize in first-time home buyers. They have programs that they offer specifically for first-time home buyers, because that person is going to be the most experienced. First-time home buyers, especially here in Miami, can come in many forms. They can work regular W-2 jobs. They can be paid through 1099. They can be business owners. So a person that specializes in these programs will help them get into the right program with the right assistance if they need it. So definitely that knowledge and that first time that they offer. Secondly, I think that the person has to want to educate, right? It's really easy to pick up a client and the client closes in 3 months and you make your commission and great, you walk away. You need to find a realtor that actually sticks with you through the process and after the process. Like, your job is not over when you make that commission. You need to remind your clients that they have to apply for homestead exemption. You have to constantly remind them, hey, you have equity in your property. There's something you could do with this. Call them, see how things are going. My clients often actually even send me pictures of mail they get that, may not be, it comes, it looks like it's from their mortgage company, but it's not. And they ask me, hey, and I'm like, no, throw it away. That's no good. There's a service that you render after the closing. And the first-time home buyers really need it. Investors, other people may not, but first-time home buyers really need it.
So when you are a first-time home buyer and you are seeking the expertise of a real estate agent, which is highly recommended because your inexperience could cause you performance issues afterwards at the title, at the closing. And so you should seek that real estate expert. And the characteristics that you should be looking for is, first, you must check their license. It is critically important that you go on to DPPR and you check the license of the realtor. And you should not be doing business with a real estate agent that is not licensed. Second, I would add to what Mr. Lane shared, is that you want to make sure that that realtor has no pending litigation or no pending investigations in the DPPR, because you have a lot of realtors out there that are doing things that are not appropriate, that are not in the best interest of their clients, and there are an open investigation, and you don't want to be doing business with someone that the investigation has not completed, and instead, whether it's been substantiated or unsubstantiated. Third, as Elaine shared, you want to make sure that you're looking for someone who is an expert in first-time home buyers. Dealing with first-time home buyers, as I did as a realtor as well, is totally different than with returning conventional and investors that we deal with on a regular basis. There's a lot of specific programs, characteristics that go in that first-time home buyer that you want that person to have expertise in. Third, you want to make sure that that person is not there just for the commission, that the person is there to be your partner. I used to tell my clients, I am not your real estate agent. I am your real estate partner. We are in a partnership, and a partnership, just like a marriage, should be for a lifetime. And so you want to make sure that that realtor is interested in you knowing more or equal to them. Because if you have a realtor that is trying to make sure that they stay with you because you don't know enough, then they're not helping you to make educated decisions. And so I agree with Elaine that you want to make sure that your realtor is not only an expert, but a teacher. So I picked my real estate agent. I know who my expert is. What should I have as my questions for that agent when I meet with them to make sure that I'm in the hands of the right person?
So you definitely need to ask about first-time homebuyer programs, who their partner may be. Lots of mortgage brokers have a real estate partner, And lots of real estate agents have a mortgage broker partner that they may recommend if the client needs or doesn't come with the other party already. I always ask my clients, my potential clients, what are your goals, right? So they need to have that. I would love for them to ask me, what were the last deals you did? What have you experienced a case like mine? I work this, that, the other. I would love for them to ask me about me. I ask them about them, right? I'd like for them to know about me. Who am I? How do I work? What are my hours? Am I a 24-hour agent or am I a part-time agent? It's also important that they ask if they are a full-time agent. First-time home buyers should not be buying with part-time agents that are not doing this work every single day. Other people may be able to, but first-time home buyers really, really need, I'm back to that expertise, right? So a full-time agent that is doing this work, that knows the market, that's out there, that's an important question as well.
And so as a first-time home buyer, you should never go to that first meeting with your real estate agent and not have a set of questions that are going to empower you to first validate that you made the right decision, because it's never too late to change the agent that you selected. And you should make sure that those questions not only establish your goals as a first-time home buyer, but also understand if the person that you're with has the expertise in your particular case, because every case, like the 5 fingers of my hand, are different. And so you want to ensure that when you share the case with that real estate agent, that they're able to give you experiences and past practices in dealing with someone like you. And I would add to that, as a realtor myself, make sure that when you sit with that real estate agent, that you are honest with them and you tell them the entire truth and nothing but the truth. We can only help you as a first-time home buyer if you are totally honest and upfront with us around your case. You don't need to be embarrassed about any circumstance, because chances are by the time you sit with that realtor, they have dealt with situations just like yours or worse. And so it's really important that you are upfront with them. You tell them everything, all the details, because nothing could hurt more your transaction than a surprise that we were not anticipating once the transaction is in the middle of the process. So it's really important that you sit down, you reflect, think of any detail, any pending litigation, any credit circumstances, any judgments, any financial uniqueness in how you get money and money goes into your accounts. All those things need to be shared up front at that initial meeting. When I was a realtor, I don't know about you, I never did my first meeting at the office. I always went to a coffee place, to a restaurant. I used to go to Latin America and Hialeah all the time to drink coffee, because I really believe that the initial meeting, establishing that partnership, that we're not here just for the business, we're here to have that long-term relationship, is so important. And I think a lot of realtors lose sight of the fact that someone's putting in your hands their future, their life, their lifetime savings. And you really need to take time to honor that in the process. I don't know if you feel the same, but
I do feel the same. It's the biggest investment after a child. It's the biggest investment that some people will be making.
And it could destroy your life.
It could destroy your life.
You make the wrong investment and you lose everything you've worked for.
Yes.
So I picked the expert. I now met with the expert. I came with my questions prepared. What do you think is step 3?
Step 3 is the pre-approval process. Getting pre-approved to know where are you in this process. Are you able to buy now? Do you qualify for what's in the market? So that you're able to start building that plan based on your pre-approval, and you get a pre-qualification number, a budget, right? And so you're going to get your big number, okay? You're approved for $300,000, and then you're going to get a smaller number, your monthly payment. Right? Those two numbers go together. So they're not, exclusive. So you may be able to buy a house for $300,000, but your monthly payment can only be $1,800. If that house has high taxes or high insurance, maybe it's going to be a little lower.
Or an association fee.
Or an association fee. Mm-hmm. So that monthly payment, that is the number that we need to make sure we stick by, more than the $300,000.
And so there's a lot of people out there that don't understand the difference between, I go to a bank like Chase, Bank of America, or I go to a mortgage broker. What's the pro and what's the con of each? What would be your opinion on that?
So when you go to a bank, your bank has a program, one program. And you must fit in the box of that program. If you are not the ideal client and you don't check off all the boxes, the bank will deny you. It doesn't mean that you don't qualify for a loan. It just means you don't qualify for a loan at that bank. Now, banks have a quota of applications that they must take every month, but they don't have a quota of closings. So if they need to take 150 applications, they're there to take 150 applications. And maybe only this month they approved 20 people. Mortgage brokers have a lot of programs, 300 programs.
I used to tell my clients when I was a mortgage broker, if you breathe and have life, I can find a program.
I have a program.
And if you go and there'll be now, I can't promise you that you're going to get the best interest rate if the program is one for a high risk mortgage. But if you breathe and you have life, I can I will close your property because I will find a program.
That's right. And people have the misconception that with a mortgage broker, they're going to pay more. The bank also charges origination fees. Mm-hmm. The bank also charges their commission amount. They're still going to pay the same amount either way. The difference is that if you don't meet the check boxes of the bank, you may have an opportunity with a mortgage broker.
And I think also when you are dealing with a mortgage broker, just like with a real estate agent, they become a partner in your life. You're not a number to them or a quota. You are actually a person. And when you go into a large entity, you are a number, a person that is part of an application, but not necessarily Elaine. And so I think for a first-time home buyer that needs that hand-holding through the process, it may be that the mortgage broker is their best option, but it also depends on their individual situation. I always would tell my clients, the more complicated your case is, the less you want to go to a traditional bank.
That's right.
Bank. You want to make sure that you go to a mortgage broker because in complications requires diversity. And you have to have a diversity of programs available to them. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. There's also, mortgage brokers, depending on their experience, of course, the longer that a mortgage broker has been in business, the more they understand the guidelines, the more they know how to weave around and how to prove certain things to the underwriters based on those guidelines. Sometimes when you go to a bank, unfortunately, you get a young, new mortgage individual. And the bank has different guidelines. Even though they may sell the mortgage like the mortgage brokers do, their guidelines are completely different. So it's difficult for you to understand as a buyer where you're going wrong when you go to a bank. Whereas the mortgage broker is that partner for you, is that hand holder for you. And if they specialize in first-time home buyers, then they have that, down pat.
The other thing that I used to inform and educate my clients, I guess because we're both teachers by craft, right? We educate everyone in any business that we do, is I used to let them know that in the bank, most of the time, they're going to find loan officers that are going to be the ones to take their applications. Not always do they find a mortgage broker who's certified and licensed in doing the work. Where if you go to a mortgage broker, you're going to have that person that's going to be the one to support you. And if they work directly with your real estate agent as a partner, it's going to ease a lot of stress because your real estate agent is going to take care of communicating with the mortgage broker to deal with a lot of the back office type of transactional steps that if you go to a major bank, your real estate agent sometimes will be a waiting line while the person answers the phone. And mortgage brokers and real estate agents work 24/7. And a bank works traditional employee hours.
Definitely.
And for a person, if you're a first-time home buyer that has a job during the day, there is a lot of things that have to get done and a lot of paperwork in a transaction for a house. And having the access to that mortgage broker and that real estate broker after hours comes really in handy as you're driving home, as you get home and talk to your partner or the people that are involved in the transaction with you, and you have a question and you text that person. A bank is not going to respond at 9 o'clock at night, but a mortgage broker and a real estate agent will. So I pick my expert. I have my meeting. I now get pre-qualified. I'm qualified. I know my number. What's next?
Next step is to open your search with your realtor and go out and see properties.
But I I don't know if it's happened to you, but I think that a lot of first-time homebuyers don't understand the importance of having a geographic area in their mind. They will simplify the search with having that geographic area. Because if they just go and say, oh, I'm qualified for $1,900, find me a house, you could spend a lot of weekends wasting time. And we know that in today's world, time is our greatest asset. And the real estate agent doesn't have time to waste, and the buyer doesn't either, because time is of the essence, because it could be that property you want is there right now, but in 5 minutes will not be there, right? And so I don't know if you agree, but I would recommend to all first-time home buyers to take drives around the geographic areas that you're interested in living in, research the schools in that geographic area, then you go to the real estate agent and say, these are the geographic areas I'm able to live in and that I would be happy. I don't know if you agree or would like to enrich that. But
I have a session. So right before I have a session with my clients, and we go on either in person or virtually, and I show them based on their number, what are some areas that have properties that meet that number.
That's awesome.
And then based on those, they'll either tell me, yes, great, I love them, or no, maybe this is not the time, or maybe, I want to wait to save more money and move to a different area, or I want to be in this area. How much do I need? And that does simplify the time wasting, right, that you're talking about, a lot. That one little session for 30 minutes really empowers them to understand how much is it where I want to live. And can I afford it right now, or do I need to downgrade and maybe get an apartment?
It also saves you a lot of gas as a realtor.
Yes, it does.
And it saves them a lot of time, because when I was a real estate agent, and practicing my license, I didn't have Google or Zoom.
That's right.
And we'd have to talk about that as we were driving down the streets, and every mile was gas you were wasting. And sometimes you would drive and half the time you could not find the place because they didn't qualify for that area.
I think that session really helps buyers understand where they are, right? It brings that number to reality.
I love it. I think that the personalized approach that you're providing that first-time home buyer is why the Elaine Group would be a 5-star rating for me if I would be a first-time home buyer, because you're not just here for me to buy a house and you to get commission. You want to make sure I make an informed decision. And once you sign that paper, you're stuck. Once you close on the house, then you got to sell it. So you have to make sure you're informed to pick the right place, because you're the one that person buying the house has to be the one to walk their dog in that community, has to be the one to do exercise in that community, has to be okay with parking their car in front of that house, and also be okay with having other people come to visit them and enter the community and see those things, right? And I think a lot of people underestimate the importance of taking everything into account. For example, how about our first-time home buyers not knowing they need to research the schools before they go into the community? And let's talk about that a little bit.
So most first-time home buyers have kids. Mm-hmm. And that is something else that I recommend, right? Okay, part of my list of questions when I meet them is, where do your kids go to school? Lots of people don't want to move their kids from the school that they're at. Mm-hmm. Or they need to engage in some type of out-of-area transfer, mm-hmm. to get them to go to where they want them to go. Mm-hmm. So researching the schools is so important. And I never recommend that you move to, your kid is going to age out of that school, mm-hmm. right? So I would never not buy a house because I can't afford to live in the school district that I want to be in, right? I would never recommend wait until your kid ages out, because you're missing out on building equity. But I also think that sometimes your kid doesn't have to go to that school. Mm-hmm. And I do tell them that, right? And there's a million options with schools now, with charters and other options that don't require you to go to that neighborhood school. But I do tell them to research the school, because that's also going to give them a picture of what is happening in that community. But
I think you make a very good case for, as you're picking your expert and you do have children and you are a first-time home buyer, it's critical that your realtor know about how to choose the right school. And so if you have a real estate agent that has no clue what the qualities of a good school are, what the schools are that are in the area, how you get a waiver to go to a different school if the one that you are in your neighborhood you don't like, you're losing out on a lot of information. So as you go to that first meeting, it's really important that you again ask the realtor, what about selecting a school? What do you know about that? And if that person doesn't know anything and you have kids, that's not your expert, because your expert has to be the person that can guide you and advise you. At least that's my opinion, right? So now I know where I'm going. I have a geographic location. You did the search. I saw 3 houses and I like all 3. How do I make a decision as a first-time home buyer which one I choose?
So when we go see properties, right, I do right when we walk out the door, just like TV, like give me your pros and your cons, right? I do sometimes take some videos because at the end of the 3rd or 4th or 5th house that you've seen, they all look the same. They don't remember which was the first one.
I like that though. Not many people take videos when they go visit a property like that, like the realtor. I think that's an amazing extra step that help you to post it afterwards in the conference room and say which one we're going to select.
I learned the hard way because when you're with a couple, a male and a female, right? The males see one thing and the female see something else, right? So they would tell me things like, oh, the house with the lamp that looked like this. I'm like, I don't look at lamps. Like I look at spaces, right? I don't look at fixtures because those can be changed. So I learned the hard way to take videos, because then I would go back and be like, what lamp was he talking? Okay, that was the second house. Okay, great.
So if you're a first-time home buyer, don't forget to take your video camera. Thank God now with the phones, we can tape anything.
So I have them pick the favorite. Okay, we're not going to go out and put 3 offers on properties, not even if the market is super competitive. I think that's very risky, and I think that's not fair to my colleagues, right? To my other agents. I always have a conversation with the agents to kind of gauge, where are we in the offer process? How many offers do they have? Some will share, some will not, but I can kind of try to figure out, if we offer the right price, are we going to be able to win this? Like, what's the possibility of winning this if I send you an offer right now? And then based on that information that I share with my client candidly, I'm completely open and honest because it is their decision. Then we pick one property to offer on. We draft that offer, which will turn into their contract if it gets accepted, and we draft it together. I explain every clause of every offer that I draft, even to the clients who don't want to hear it.
So it's really important that, if I'm hearing you correctly, and I concur from my own experience, it's really important that no first-time home buyers sign any contract that you have not read completely, you have not been advised completely. And even when you're being advised by your expert, have a moment to verify what that contract states. Because once you put your initials on each page, once you sign the final page, that becomes an executed contract and you're liable for it. And so it's really important that you understand it. If you have a language different than the one that's in the contract, for example, if you speak Spanish and the contract is in English, make sure that you have the appropriate person there that has your vested interest to read it for you and translate. Because again, you can never say afterwards, I did not know, because your initial will indicate that you did. So make sure you have a person like Elaine who is reviewing it with you and you're co-creating that contract.
So our contract gets accepted. And then the saga begins of home ownership.
You can't celebrate yet. Just because the contract got signed does not mean you get the keys. From the contract signature to the keys, there's a lot of work to do. So it's really important that you don't get your hopes too high, but don't anticipate the negativity, right? But there is possibilities of failure and success in the trajectory from the contract to the keys. Talk about that for our first home buyers.
So I always tell my clients, you have several moments in your contract that you are able to exit that contract and get your deposit money back.
Very important question.
Step 1, contract gets accepted. You have 3 days to put in your escrow deposit. That's your, I want this house and I'm starting this process. And you're going to put in your escrow deposit. And that money is what holds that property for you for the amount of days from the day it gets accepted to the closing. Then there's some milestones that are really important. So the first one is your inspection period. And during your inspection period, you are able to back out of the contract and receive your escrow deposit back. There's a misconception. You do not have to perform an inspection in order to be able to back out of the contract. You can simply have seen something or realized something, or something happens in your life and you need to back out within that time period, you are able to. I recommend to my clients that they conduct an inspection with a licensed inspector, an inspection that is needed for their insurances. So they will have to do the 4-point inspection, the wind mitigation for their insurances, but also a full inspection of the property where they're checking electrical and plumbing.
So that you have no surprises afterwards. Because imagine when you just bought a house as a first-time home buyer and your savings you just gave as a down payment, you move into the house and the AC breaks and you have to replace the whole unit because you didn't do an inspection. That's going to be more expensive than what the inspection is going to cost you with a licensed professional. It's really important that no matter how much you know about handyman work, no matter how much you know about electricity, plumbing, that you don't take it for granted that the people that do this every day, which are those licensed inspectors, are going to be detailed and have a template, a rubric that they utilize that's approved by the insurances and also can save you from having a post-closing expense that you can't financially afford. So this is not the time when you're buying a house and you're in the midst of the contract to the keys to save money on an inspection. You can save it in other places, but that's definitely not the one to save it in.
The inspection also gives us the opportunity to negotiate with the seller. If the AC is 30 years old and we know that maybe it's not going to get us through the first year, maybe we can ask the seller to replace it, or ask the seller to give us a credit, or ask the seller to buy a home warranty for us for a year in case it breaks, so it'll cover. The inspection gives us some negotiating room if there is something big, or the room to back out if it's something that we're not willing to take on.
And you know, you're saying something that I want to reiterate for our first-time homebuyers that are listening to this podcast. You want to be with a real estate expert who is not so anxious to close that they will not defend your interest. And so it's really important that you have a real estate agent that when encountering something that is not a wise investment, they're telling you, this is not a wise investment, we need to back out. Or this inspection did not come correctly, I don't recommend you proceed. Or that they're actively negotiating on your behalf when negotiation is warranted. It's really critical that you don't have an agent that is focused on the amount they're going to get at closing and that's all they care about, and then in turn really cheat you from having appropriate representation. And if you feel at any point that real estate agent is not defending your interests, you don't have to remain to keep the property. There's a process by which you can file concerns with their broker if they're not the broker, or with other individuals to make sure that your interest is protected. Don't feel you have to settle for default only because you don't want to lose the house that you just put a contract in.
So once we pass the inspection period, we wait and we submit all of the documents that the mortgage side is asking us for. It's really, really important to be timely with that because we're on a timeline in the contract. We need to have our loan approved by a certain amount of time, and that is referenced in the contract. So throughout this process, our mortgage professional is going to be asking us, hey, send me this, send me that, I need this, I need that. The faster you send it, the faster we can have that loan approval, and the faster we're protected. And the faster we can get to closing. Step 2 in getting out of the contract, right? People are afraid, what if the house doesn't appraise? Or what if I offered above appraisal, and the house doesn't appraise? So the appraisal is our second way we can get out of the contract. If the house does not appraise, we will have to negotiate. You will not receive a loan for more money than the appraised value. Now,
that's a very important point. And when I was in real estate, I always confronted the battle with my clients who said, I don't care about the appraisal. I'll pay the extra money. I just want the house. And so when should a buyer determine it is warranted to say, I will go over the market appraisal because it's worth it?
So during COVID, that happened a lot during our COVID years. There was no inventory. Interest rate was really, really low. And paying above appraisal, what somebody would have paid in rent for a year was warranted because the interest rate was so low that we were never going to see that again. I think there are some times, even now, where it would be warranted. If you want to live in a particular neighborhood that may not have a lot of inventory and there's a lot of competition, maybe you want to live next to your parents, or, you know, there's a reason, a specific reason that it has to be in that neighborhood and that particular house.
Meaning there has to be a beyond I love this house type of attachment to that particular contract and that particular transaction that would cause someone to pay above the market price. And first-time home buyers, you have to understand that when you are paying above the market price, that money has to be added to the original down payment that you agreed to give, which means that your loan is going to be your loan. The amount that you've been approved is the amount you're going to get approved. And the bank will only give you up to the amount appraised. So if you have a need to pay above the market, you will have to come out of pocket for that, in addition to the required down payment that the bank or the mortgage broker is asking you to give. So it really has to be a circumstance in which there's no other choice but for you to have that house and that contract that would warrant for you to do such a thing, unless you have a lot of money and are willing to do that. But most first-time home buyers are really buying their house with that initial savings that they did to transition from being a tenant to being a homeowner. And so we want to make sure that you take from this podcast that it may be okay to say it didn't appraise, it wasn't meant to be. And sometimes we can't push everything in life because there's a consequence for that.
Most of the time, sellers will negotiate and will come down. And sometimes they may not come down all the way, and it'll be a small above appraisal, $2,000 or $2,500. That's okay. You know, that's okay. Sometimes properties are remodeled. There's certain elements inside the house that would be worth those $2,000 anyways.
Of course.
So I do tell my clients, you know, I do share with them, listen, here's what I think, but it's not my opinion, right? It's not, I'll give you all the information and you guys can make your decision. Some proceed and some do not. But it is important that the client make that decision, not the agent, not the mortgage broker. The client really has to be the one that makes that decision.
Yeah, you have to empower the client to be able to do that. So going back, first-time home buyers, so far we've covered the fact that step 1 is decide you want to buy a home. Step 2 is find an expert in the area that you're trying to buy, which means a real estate agent, right? Make sure the real estate agent is licensed, make sure there's no pending investigations, and make sure that they really are educating you in how to be a buyer. What are your rights? What are your recommendations? What are the experts' resources for you to be able to know that you're making the right decision? Next, get pre-qualified. The choice between a traditional bank and a mortgage broker is how complicated your case is and whether you qualify in the traditional manner, and if you want that personalized attention versus you're part of a group of applications, as Elaine mentioned with regards to the quota. After that, make sure you identify the geographic location that you want to live in. Share that with your real estate agent and have the real estate agent conduct the search. The search will then determine what inventory is available for you to go see. And once you go see it, make sure you take a video camera or your phone, if you have a phone that has a video camera, and make sure that you take video of the house so that when you sit back and you're trying to make the decision on which one am I going to select, you don't have to go by memory, but by actual visuals, because you need to select one. Sending inventory, sending contracts and offers on multiple inventory is not a good decision, because then you end up either holding inventory for others, or it could end up coming back with all of them and then you're stuck in step 1, and sometimes timing is not on your side. You always have to have the deposit ready, because you have 3 days more or less to put your deposit in equity when you want the house. So it can't be I'm buying a house and I don't have the money saved to do it, or I have the money locked and I'm not going to be able to access it within the time period because your contract will not be executed. And a lot of people don't realize you can have the money saved in a certificate, but if it's not available, you really don't have access to the money. So it's important that you make all the necessary steps prior to to have your money available to you. As she said, then you create the contract together and the offer goes out. If the offer is accepted, your contract is executed. And then it's important you find your professional who's going to conduct your inspections. That's not the time to save money. That's the time to make sure you pay for a complete inspection so that you can be sure that the house you are buying is what you want. After that, you want to conduct an appraisal. And if the appraisal comes back like you anticipated, the value is perfect, beautiful, you move on. If not, then negotiations or conversations need to take place where you, the buyer, needs to decide, do I pay over the price? Am I going to let the house go? Or is the seller going to negotiate with me, lower the price so that it is within the range that the bank is authorizing for my loan? And then comes the next step. What's the next step?
And then we close. And then we conduct a walkthrough, make sure that the property is in the same condition as it was the day of inspection, the day we saw it, and we close and you get your keys.
And Elaine, you go through you do the walkthrough, and there's a difference between a punch list and something that should hold closing. For a first-time home buyer, I have like little things that need to be addressed, but it's not enough to hold the closing. Or should I always hold the closing if I have something pending?
No. So the house should be in the same condition as inspection, except that it's empty now, right? The TVs are gone. There may be some little holes in the wall. Those things don't hold closings. A big issue, a leak or a not working air conditioning or a stove that doesn't work, something that broke, a big appliance, those things hold closings.
I think it's really important for you to make sure your real estate professional, again, is advocating and serving as your ambassador, and that they're there to tell you, I think this needs to be fixed before you close, or this can be post-closing. We also have to remember that most of the properties are sold as is. So when you're looking at your property, make sure you ask your real estate agent, is this property as is, or is there going to be any type of upgrades or fixes prior to closing? And it's also really important that you know that your down payment is not the only thing that you need. You're going to need the closing costs. And so please make sure that you are taking that into account as you're determining, I have enough money and I'm ready to go, or I need to save a little bit more money. Sometimes the seller will contribute to your closings, but sometimes they won't. And so you want to be prepared, and you don't want to assume that the seller is going to contribute. Depending on the market, is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? That's taken into account. But you always want to make sure that you have that ability. And I want to challenge the first-time home buyers that you want to make sure you have at least 3 months of your payments saved after closing, before you close. Meaning when you're going to go buy a house, make sure you have some level of savings that's going to remain in your account after you close. You can't take all of your money and put it as a down payment because you don't know what life has it's going to happen the next day. And so you want to make sure you have those 3 months, because I can't tell you how many clients buy a house, they stay with no money in the bank, something happens the next day and they don't have the money to pay their first mortgage. And 30 days, after 30 days, after 30 days, come back really quickly, and time today is flying by. And if you don't have that ability to overcome a challenge and pay your mortgage, that could be a detrimental thing for you. So now I closed on my house. What is the most important thing that a first-time home buyer should make sure they do each month?
Put your payment on automatic. Put it on auto. So at the closing, you're going to get your first payment coupon. You won't be able to go online and pay. And oftentimes your payment is not going to be, it's not going to be the next first, it'll be the following. So
Correct.
For 1 month, you're not going to have a payment. So it's important that you follow the instructions on that coupon to make your first payment. And then you'll receive a letter. Whether your loan gets sold, which is very common that they get sold within the first 30 days, you'll receive a letter from your new servicer, or you'll receive a letter from whoever the servicer is telling you, hey, here's your account number.
Okay.
Here's all the information. You can pay online. You go online, you create your account, and you put it on auto payment.
By the way, for the first-time home buyers, because I know this is always a fear, I got a letter, they sold my mortgage. Does that mean I'm going to pay more? Does that mean that they're making money off me? Why are they selling so much? That you don't have to worry about that. When you close on the property, the terms with which you close will remain. If they sell it 27 times, the only obstacle to that is 27 times you have to set up your auto pay. But it does not mean that something changes in your mortgage unless you have a variable interest, which is a conversation for another podcast. But I would definitely want to make sure that you understand understand that that letter doesn't mean anything negative to you as a first-time home buyer. I think today, as a member of this community, as a listener to this podcast, if you are a first-time home buyer, we have empowered you with the necessary steps to successfully go from a dream to getting your keys. We hope that these steps will empower you to make the right decisions as you select your expert and as you navigate the journey of buying a home, your first home. The last thing that I want to focus on, Elaine, is how much percentage of deposit do I need to have as a first-time home buyer?
So I don't want to scare anyone. Okay. So first-time home buyer loans, 3 or 3.5% for down payment. And then you're going to need another probably 5 to 6% for closing costs.
So to be on the safe side, from 8 to 10% of the total value.
8 to 10. But if you don't have that, it's okay because we have first-time home buyer assistance programs. So you don't have to wait until you have 8 to 10% to call me to put the plan together. We can put the plan together even if you don't have that amount of money saved, and we can work towards saving, and we can see if there's a program that could help you.
There's always help, right? There's
always help.
When there's a will, there's a way.
Right? That's right.
Remember what I said. If you breathe and have life, don't worry, you qualify. Now, here's the thing. You have to be able to proactively sit with your realtor and plan the process and plan the steps. And the last thing that I think it's really important for my first-time home buyers, I got an FHA loan. I am a first-time home buyer. I paid 3% down payment. Does that mean I have to live in that house for the rest of my life?
You do not. You do not need to live in that house. You can actually keep your loan, and you can either sell or you can rent your house and buy your next house, and your loan will still continue.
And that's really important because you're not stuck there forever. That is the beginning of a portfolio that you are creating for your personal wealth and your generational wealth. Elaine, thank you for co-presenting and co-hosting this very important lesson for our first-time home buyers, which is what trajectory they need to follow. I think would they leave more empowered from this podcast to be able to make the right decisions. We are going to be doing this podcast in Spanish at a later time because we know out there's a lot of first-time home buyers that are Spanish speaking and are asking for these questions, and they may not understand it, even though now with all the translations that you can do technology-wise to listen to a podcast that's in English and Spanish, I encourage you to do that in the meantime, but don't hesitate to be on the lookout by subscribing to this channel for the Spanish version of this, because our goal in this podcast is to empower you with the necessary tools to make the change in your own life or in the life of others. If you know of someone that is a first-time home buyer, you may not be, but some of your friends, your network may be, make sure you share the podcast with them and help them out, because it takes that helping hand to make sure that they don't make the mistakes. Thank you, Elaine, again for joining us today and for being part of this journey for our listeners. We really appreciate your expertise. I recommend the Elaine Group. As you see, she is a planner. She's an educator. She takes your best interest at heart, and she takes this job very serious. She's not here for the commission. She's here for making sure you're able to make an informed decision. Thank you for being part of Lead with Jeffrey. I hope you've enjoyed today. Stay inspired, and I wish you the best of luck as you buy your first home.